Oh, we're doing magic. Meow, meow, meow. Oh, oh boy. Oh, yes. Oh, there. Oh, there. What do I want to... Yeah, what are you up to, Bear? Meow? Oh, you're relaxed. Yeah, you're relaxed. Oh, wee. Mm. 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 Oh, dear. Oh. Oh, let's get up. Oh. Been up all night listening. I can't remember what I was listening to. Oh, it was surround. Or was it around or over and under, over, under, inside out, under, done, over, done? I can't remember. There's so many. Surround. Directional, surround, and kind of diffused or frequency, kind of not coming direct at your listening position. I mean, oh dear, it's a while since it's been a while since I've been in that, an actual, well, to be in an actual cinema is I'm not sure if that's really an accurate saying. You could simulate it at the home, depending on the size of the speaker. If you use very small speakers, it's very easy to do a simulation. If you use very large ones, it's very awkward due to the width, the length, the height of a room. It's very awkward, and I mean with matched LCR, typically common LCR matched. It's very difficult. And then what I mean is, so you don't get too much reflectivity or wall boundary reflection of, not really reflection, I don't think. I think it's more like it just changes the frequency. It kind of, rather the frequency wavelength traveling out a little bit more wider, it's compressed, it's pushed in. Here's the thing. I mean, you put closed headphones on, you play a sine wave frequency, say 30 hertz, 25 hertz, you can hear that tone. You can hear the pureness of that tone. If you overdo it so much, maybe on input signal of an amplifier or so, you got a source signal coming from a computer, room EQ wizard, true RTA, a sound generator, and maybe if you overdo it too much, the signal may not go like a nice curve, nice curve. It kind of goes up and then goes straight horizontal and then comes back down. So it's clipping, and the actual pureness of that tone may not then sound correct. I had a similar problem like that last night because I've been rewiring the system. And it happens at a certain voltage level. And I noticed like playing 40 hertz, and I thought, why does the 40 hertz sound a bit weird? It hasn't got a total woo. It's more like rather than woo. It's very difficult to articulate, but that's the best I can do. And I played 50 and it was doing the same, and got to 30 hertz, it was okay, sort of thing. And I think, this is weird. 30 hertz sounds okay. Of course, I was testing on the THX monitor so I could see the sine wave, but I'm only seeing the sine wave signal of somewhere else in the sound chain rather than testing it elsewhere in the sound chain, in the B chain, to see what's going on. Maybe I should have used my Regal oscilloscope and tested on the Denon on the headphone output to see if the same problem occurs on the headphone output. And if it doesn't, then it's only occurring on the RCA output, which I could easily, find out what's doing that. What's the fault? Is it something the way I've done the wiring on the unbalanced output? Because the Denon, which is the main AVR in the system, is an unbalanced ground and positive output. So, or is it negative and positive out? Is it like negative ground signal? Is it sort of ground signal? Because there's several symbols that go with the with audio or anything electrical. There's so many different symbols of like earth connection. It's like a couple of lines, a couple of horizontal lines, and a little dot at the top or something that indicates a ground. Sometimes it's easy if they write it, say this is GND, that's ground. And then there's another symbol where it's kind of like the lines, but it's kind of pointing, it's kind of diagonal like that with the lines, and that's a signal. Ground goes to a chassis, to a, so you connect one unit and another unit, and you connect the chassis, wiring. You have a wire, connect it, one component to the other component, the chassis, and then you got the positive, negative. But usually positive, negative. Sometimes with balanced audio, that's the only way you. I've not actually tested with the Rigel oscilloscope to see the waveform, because the waveform on positive would be kind of that shape, and on the negative it would be that shape. So the two come together. the two come together, sort of thing, and it filters allegedly the noise. So then you could put signal into it. You put your signal in that travels through the positive, negative, and of course you got the ground or maybe chassis signal shield in the shield case, and you got that connected, so it would keep or reduce, minimize any typical maybe 50, 60 hertz cycle mains hum. But I haven't tested my Regal to see, put an oscilloscope probe on the positive, the negative, obviously another one of the leads connected to ground, but to test the positive, negative, to see whether my signal flow is okay, because what's the point of buying an oscilloscope if I'm not going to use it totally? Because I could test the signal going to the RTA analyzer, and I could see what the frequency response is looking like. That is direct frequency response, not measured acoustically by a microphone in the room. So I measure it direct, so I can see what the frequency response, if it's flat, or is it kind of going that way, or is it kind of going this way and then up. I have to observe the pink noise to see what the signal is like. Ideally, the signal should be flat. And so when I see that on my B chain, and I'm testing from one cinema processor to another and another and another, and then I look at the signal and I think, it's kind of going that way and then up. So it's going flat and then it's going up. Okay, it seems like this up here needs to come down, or this down here needs to go up. So I do a bit of wiring, and then I get the signal flat, and I think, okay, that's okay, that looks okay. It's like I'm hearing the full low end and up to the high end. It looks flat now. But it's testing it even more to making sure that the signal's okay, as well as maybe having it on two oscilloscope modes or two RTA modes. I'm not sure if the true RTA could do two RTAs at the same time. It could do oscilloscope, dual stereo, dual trace oscilloscope mode. I think the Room EQ Wizard does. I think that's got one, but I don't usually use it because I've always found the oscilloscope mode on the Room EQ Wizard. Always found the oscilloscope on the REM a little bit iffy. So I always occasionally maybe use the true RTA because I find the oscilloscope mode a bit easier on that. I can work with it a bit quicker. But it's only 2-channel. Whereas if I use my Regal, it's a 4-channel oscilloscope. So I could connect it to 4 sources of signal and observe the sine wave with a waveform on the oscilloscope. So if I've got a sine wave playing, I can look at the trace of the signal and then the voltage, and I know then, one of the channels is slightly undervoltaged by millivolts, and I can adjust that to get the same value, the same voltage value. So if it was 0000, then I get 000. That's what I want. That's, or 1111 or whatever. That's the value I want, equal voltage value within a tolerance, so it is acceptable for the processor type, so the signal's not being overdone. So it's going to clip the signal, signal go up and then it goes straight. That's clipping, and then goes down again. So you've got to have a nice pure curve shape on the oscilloscope. Other things is, where to, oh God, I just don't want to get up today. Other thing is now testing the, what's my cat bear up to? You see, I hear things in above me, this height, and below. I hear sound, as well as behind. I can hear sound behind me at this angle, that angle, that angle, that angle, and that angle, and that angle, and so on and so on. I map. I hear sound. Bear, get calm down. Calm down. I hear sound in a, well, I suppose not a sphere. Not a sphere is, well, a half sphere, half I can't say the word. Hemisphere, a half hemisphere. So it's only going like from here, and then it goes up, round, and it comes back down, because ground plane is down here. So if you're standing on the ground, you'd hear a sound more or less like that. But that really depends, really, because if I was walking along and happened to be standing near a drain, a storm drain, while it's pouring rain, really, I could hear water going along the road, and then it drops down. So therefore I hear sound above, this way, and below. I hear it very, very good, depending on the frequency. If it's playing omnidirectional low frequencies, then no, that's very, very difficult to locate the position. It'd be like having a stealth aircraft, a stealth plane that travels at a specific, has a specific signature where it could elude radar or such. It's like sounds that we think we hear, because they're all playing randomly in music, movie. They're all playing. It's all randomly moving. You get a bit of directionality. You get a bit of not too sure about that, because it seems omnidirectional. It seems like it's going somewhere else. You get different cue arrivals, whether it be first reflection with a little bit of diffused, because sound is moving fast and it goes in your room at a very fast speed. Or if you do it outdoors, use the same speakers as what you got indoors and put them outdoors in the same exact spacing. So you got a seating outside, that you're going to use, not the same seating that you use indoors. It's a little bit too literal to take everything out your room and put it in the garden or outdoors, and then do the same testing with the same speakers. Set them up on, set them up on tripods or something, so they're more or less in the same position and such. And providing you've got the memory to memorize the sound and make notes, maybe video diary, to how you're hearing it. So you got a visual representation of how you're reacting to that, and then take it outdoors, set it all up, and then do the same thing again. Does it sound the same? Is your reaction the same, or is it totally different? It will be different because you got no wall boundaries. It's open. And you got no ceiling boundary. It's open, literally 20 miles up. I think that's to where it gets to about the edge of, I think, just about where outer space is, really, and that's where it thins out, and the air sound waves won't travel up anymore because there's no air particle for the sound to be excited and make impulse sounds come into a microphone, let alone your ears. But you will get reflections around this way. You will get reflections around here because there'll be a house over that way. There'll be a fence. Therefore, it's a boundary reflection. If you go out somewhere like pretty open, like a desert, there are quite a few popular deserts around. You go out to a desert where it's flat sort of, and then set the speakers up and then do the same listening test again. It would be total opposite. You'd get ground reflection, of course. Depending on what typical desert you go out to, I'm thinking White Sands, or is it Mojave Desert or something, California? Any of those deserts, or Area 51 Desert, which I think that is Vegas, Las Vegas, isn't it? You go out to any of those deserts, as well as taking some carpet. So you could lay carpet down because the desert floor would have a specific reflectivity, because it's dry. So it's going to have a typical reflectivity. So you do one test, as you do the frequency testing sweeps and such. So you get so you can see what's going on, as well as multi microphones. So you could switch these microphone on or these one off, or have every microphone going and get a frequency sweep of the left, the center, the right, the surround channel, the back surround, the overhead surrounds, which you would have to have a truss erected so that you got speakers at the same height that you would have in your room, so that they're the same height from the floor, from the ground up to where they are, as well as making an artificial ceiling. So you can't just have the truss, because a truss would be kind of like that. It'll be very open, and you have speakers rigged on here and here and there. So you got to have it so it's flat, like a ceiling, like an artificial, and do the testing. But it's still outdoors, and you're going to notice on the horizontal round, the speakers are going to be very open. The wavelength is going to travel, and you're going to notice that the speakers that you're using are not going to be not that good, because they're limitations. They're not PA speakers. So you'd have to go out to a desert with an assorted range of speakers, the ones that you use in the home, and use, I think, typical cinema PA speakers, because that's what movies are mixed on. That's what movies are played back, reproduced back on. So you'd have to use those. And then you realise that the small speakers that you got are really inefficient, lousy. They're okay. They seem to be okay when they're in a room that's enclosed with walls, a ceiling. But when they're tested outside, they're like, there's no point putting any more power in this, really, because they're going to reach their limit any moment here. They're very close to their limit, and there's no point going any further with it. So, got to take those out. And then use the cinema PA ones, and then you realise, oh, this is good, because you're running at the same power that you still had the speakers, the smaller speakers, like Calypso, typical Calypso, or maybe those M&K speakers, that they say they mix Star Wars on it. Yeah, sure they do. They only use that in post sound editing. They don't use that in final mix. In final mix, they use cinema JBL PA speakers. So you test everything, and see how it works. But usually putting cinema PA speakers into a small room, you're not going to get totally the same loud dynamic range level that you would get with a cinema, because typically the room is small, the bass is going to build up. The bass is going to build up at certain points in the room, and it's going to make things rattle or resonate, and you're going to have to secure it down, because really you got to condense that sound. You got to modify it, condense it down a little bit at certain frequencies because of the standing waves, and work it out, figure it out. And I think working and figuring it out can be easily done out in a desert. This could take, you have to go out to a desert with a friend or a group that all have the same way of thinking, so that you could go out to a desert and you'd be out there for maybe a week or 2 weeks of testing. There's always these people that test. There are lots of groups, or sometimes institutes, maybe sort of like ambisonics, where they do a lot of testing, because they got nothing else better to do, because that's what they do. Just as someone would go out to a desert and start painting and, drawing it, sketching it on paper, and then start doing watercolor or oil painting. They got a little bit of music there to listen to on a cheap radio cassette player or whatever, a little bit of music there, and they just sketch and paint the landscape. So that's what they do. Everyone's different. We all take a break. We all go to the toilet. We all have something to eat. We all go to sleep. We all got those sort of things in common, but other things like pursuit of, whether it be chemistry, biological, astronomy, artwork, science, which is audio and cinema or whatever. That's all science. That's all under science and technology. You know, there's all those sort of things. So testing the speakers outside. I mean, if I was testing, I would take quite a few things to test. Theory, principles, to test everything, to see what goes on with the wave form of sine wave frequencies and how well they reproduce outdoors to how they reproduce on indoors. Indoors on a large auditorium cinema, it's got a large space, so therefore the waveform, you know, it can travel a bit. It's going to have peaks and nulls at somewhere in the room because of, you know, it's still in a room, you know, whereas the waveform of 20 hertz is, I'll have to Google it, is over 100 foot or something. It's very long. And then the further you go down into the infrasonic frequency, their waveforms could go up to about a mile or so. You know, most homes or even a cinema is not even a mile square in size. If it were, you'd see that cinema for miles around because it's like it's over there. Can't you see that gigantic building? It'd be larger. It would be larger than the VLA. That's the vehicle assembly building where they put the rockets together in Cape Canaveral. It would be larger than, in fact, it would be larger than the Pentagon because it's a mile in size, in square size. They don't make cinemas that size yet, unless it's playing outdoors, of course, and outdoors playing soundtrack. If it were a movie soundtrack, it would have to have specific a sound mix, because if you were to take a normal cinema sound mix and try and reproduce it outdoors, certain sound effects that are soft and quiet may be a little bit hard to hear because you still got noise outdoors. That's going to cause a frequency masking. So if you got a film soundtrack that's got a very soft sound and it's down at this level here, and you got noise outdoors here, it's going to mask it. You ain't going to notice. If the sound was just underneath it, the noise outdoors, and you got this sound, very soft sound, you kind of hear the noise outdoors very, very mildly, but you still hear this, but it's still, there's something there that's like, oh gosh, that's you know, that's why cinemas have to have their noise floor very, very low. So there's no sound from air conditioning, and the air conditioning system, where the manifolds go to, and where the whole air conditioning system is located, and it's very complicated. It's a very complicated thing. It's like you need all this air conditioning to give you cool air, okay, on a hot summer, and it's got to be quiet, because in actual fact, if you hold an ice cube or bit of ice and hold it above you, all you feel is cool air coming down. So even if I do that, I can still hear that. I can hear my hand moving. I can hear the vibration because it's all connected. It's called in-head cavity sound vibration. So I could hear that still, as well as I hear the flapping. And depending on where you do it and how you do it, you can, it's like, no, I can't really hear it that clearly. But you hold an ice cube above you, or even ice cream. You take ice cream out, anything frozen out the freezer, and you hold it above your head. All you feel is cool air. Cool air goes down, warm air goes up, or the sun heats the solar cross, and then warm air rises and turbulence. I don't like that. So yeah, you get that effect. And it's all invisible, and it's quiet. But you have instrumentations to see all this. You could use thermal, like Predator, thermal vision, so you could see the cool air, which is a colder color, and then warmer air, which is a warmer color in the color spectrum. So you got all this instrumentation stuff to test and check and measure it acoustically, as well as the cinema speakers in the auditorium connected to the amplifiers, connected to the crossover, connected to the crossovers, connected to the equalizers, or was it no, connected to the equalizers to the crossovers? It depends. There's several ways of doing it. You could have a direct equalizer connected to a crossover, a single EQ connected to a crossover, or you can have independent equalizers to each crossover, so that way you get better adjustment on the particularly if you notice anything with the crossover slope where it might have a signal delay in the bass, maybe to align the bass with the high frequency, because the bass driver is located here, the bass driver, and the high frequency horn driver is located back here. So you got to measure the distance and then calculate, adjust the variable time delay on the bass and delay it so the signal is kind of moving back until it's kind of in line with the compression, where the compression driver is. And then measure the results electronically and acoustically to see if they are lining up and it's doing roughly what someone might think in theory. Write it on paper, draw it, write it, whatever, and then actually testing it to see whether it's like, oh wow, it does exactly what I envisioned. So you get that aligned, okay. The signal's aligned. Bass, yeah, so equalizer, crossovers, and what type of crossovers do you want to use? Do you want to use passive crossover? Well, they're typical in most speakers. It's mandatory with crossovers, passive, or you can remove or go around those passive crossovers by just simple wiring. All you do is connect wiring so it would go directly to the bass driver, the mid-range, the high range, or the bass driver and a HF horn, or bass driver, mid-range horn and high range horn. You know, design it that way. Or you could have one speaker that's going to be using a low frequency, a more steeper low frequency crossover. That's called the sub bass. So you're using basically the same speaker. It's not a sub bass speaker. It's just a crossover. That's all it is. It's not a sub bass speaker. Just because someone says that's a sub bass speaker, that doesn't necessarily mean it is bloody so. You look at these small sub bass speakers, typical for the home. They're not sub bass speakers. They could call it whatever they bloody want, but that's not. You put that in a bloody large cinema auditorium, you're going to need so many of those speakers because their efficiency is a little bit lower than to PA speakers that are used for sub bass and using a crossover, where they say the crossover region going from here to this point, that's the sub bass. Okay. Which doesn't really go down to the infrasonic. So the infrasonic is down here. Down here. That's the infrasonic. And then you come up to, from here up to here, the sub-bass frequencies. And that should have specifically a crossover frequency filter, cropping off all the infrasonic range, because the sub, you know, to reproduce the infrasonic, the waveform, the how it should or sound or feel, it shouldn't really sound, it should feel more, as well as the sub bass should feel more rather than just hearing it, because it's in a small room. It's trying to struggle it pressurizes the room, but is it over pressurizing the room where it's building up too much and it just becomes overwhelming, where the other frequencies that are playing low frequency, the same depending on the film mix, it's easy to measure these things electronically, so you can see what's actually going on with the actual film mix signal when you measure it electronically. It's a lot easier, and then you can then work it out then how to interpret that and fit that in the room, and then kind of like, if it's a movie I've already seen at a cinema, specific size, and usually I'm very good at memorizing the acoustical sound, that is the bass, the mid, the highs. If it sounded too bright, harsh, toppy sounding, I had to put earplugs in. That was a pretty rubbish sound system as it goes, because I don't notice movies playing as harsh and loud like that 33 years ago, or even going back as far as Sense-Around. I never had to cover my ears, but It's not a case of how old you are. That's bullshit. I don't know why that comes up in audio files sometimes. That's just a load of bullshit. It's a load of bollocks. Because anyone young could hear something and then realize, well, gosh, damn, it's intrusive, that level intensity, be it whether it's electric drilling into a wall where it's about 100 plus dBA, because it's using a masonry drill. If you were drilling into metal using a metal drill, it's going to be about 100 plus dBA with a bloody drill. So you're going to be wearing earplugs and ear defenders so you can do the drilling and feel comfortable, because then it's going to feel like a very quiet vacuum cleaner. All vacuum cleaners will have different sound pressure level, different characteristics in their frequency response with sound pressure level, because you've got to have frequency and sound pressure level. You've got two things there to measure. You can't just measure it with a sound level meter. That doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't show you the frequency. So then you've got frequency, then you could think, how can I modify this? And then if you modify it, you could trade off a little bit of frequency. It comes down a little bit. Okay. And you see that on the SPL meter. Okay. Just made it just that little bit quieter, but not totally. So if you got a film soundtrack and you got measured the frequency response direct and then try to interpret that into a room, how are you going to make it fit? Because like I say, I can memorize just about every bloody movie I've seen at a cinema. I'm kind of like a human RTA, a human real-time analyzer, a human REM, but still need test equipment so that you could see what's going on visually as well as listening and feeling. Does it feel correct? Mr. Spock would say that would be illogical. We suppress our feelings. Well, bloody hell, you're a lot of use then, aren't you? So that's how I memorize film sound. Everyone is different. And I'm thinking, why is everyone different? Why is everyone... There's so many people on YouTube where they measure their sub bass. There's one guy on YouTube, he measures his sub bass, but he's all doing it in room with the microphone. He's not measuring it direct from his AVR. He doesn't even know for fact. He doesn't even know what his characteristic of his AVR is or his processor. He doesn't know what the frequency curves are. He has got no idea because he's not measured it. He doesn't have the equipment, which is very cheap. It's just go and buy a typical cinema booth monitor on eBay. To get a THX like what I got is very rare. I haven't seen any of the classic THX sound systems on eBay now for over a year, maybe 2 years now, maybe 2 years. There are 3 different types of the THX that were made: the THX 900, the THX 3417, which I use. It's the classic. And then there's the THX D1138. Oh, the numbers 1138. I think that was Robert Duvall in the movie, and 3417 was the female. So I got the female in my kitchen. I got the male. I think it's up there somewhere, up on the rack, up there. It's way up there. It's on the rack. I've got the male version. I've got Robert Duvall Robert Duvall up there. Who was the female that played his playmate? I don't know. And of course, the earlier version, which came out in 1983 for Return of the Jedi. And that was a DBX 900 THX, Lucasfilm Limited. There's not much you could do with that crossover monitor, the THX 900, because the pattern didn't go through for the THX 3417 until 1987, just on the heels of when Willow, came out in 88, and the THX Shimron, scored by James Horner, the Bass Buster. Well, just turn the fader down a little bit, or recalibrate the system so it doesn't do bass busting, Otherwise, keep the trailer; it's good. The revisioned, the watered down, the kind of relax it a little bit trailer, THX Shimron. It's okay. It's okay. It still rumbles my room. Rumbles my THX cinema, flipping heck. But the original is probably second best THX trailer to THX Broadway. THX Broadway is brilliant, but most people that play THX Broadway in the home probably haven't got much clue on how it's really supposed to sound and feel. You got no clue. You say, it scared me as a child. Well, blimey, if you would have saw Sensorround back in 1974 and 5 when Earthquake played, that would have scared you. It didn't scare me. Didn't scare me. Didn't even, it kind of startled me because that sort of level of sound for cinema reproduction playback then was kind of unheard. You often feel the soundtrack on regular film soundtracks when it's at the very highest peak level in the film mix. May only just feel it a little bit in the auditorium, a little bit. But when Sensorround was playing, it was like flipping heck. I could feel that. Damn. Even the opening credits of Earthquake, the music, when the title came on screen with yellow letters, boom, that I could feel against my body. So, that's when I'm 8 years old, and I don't care for cinema sound. I don't care much for it. I like visuals and such, but I was kind of hearing it. I wasn't listening to it. I was hearing it. I wasn't listening yet. Listening is listening. I know what speaker that is. I know what specific to listening for how they mix a movie. Listening out for, are they going to do something unpredictable, or are they going to, because everything changes. Everything's changing, and, trying to get frequency response lower and higher in the surround channel, because the surround channel, even back then, was a bit limited to frequency response. So, over the decades, it's progressed. And of course, you still got an X curve, because an X curve there is specifically because certain speakers can't play very, very well. And so they just put in a specific frequency curve, until they probably got speakers that could go a little bit more higher. Not that you're going to hear it. The sound will probably be there in the auditorium, measured on a microphone. It picks up very well, but as for us, no, we're not going to notice it. But until you get somewhere where it can go a bit more, then they can probably say, like, throw that bloody X curve and throw it out the window, get rid of it. Because all it is just filtering the film mix to specifics. Film soundtracks in the earlier days didn't have a very high frequency. Amplifiers were very early days. There would be valve type amplifiers with a high efficiency speaker in a cinema auditorium. I'm guessing most people might have had those sort of speakers in their home for listening to vinyl or 78 RPM record discs back then. Some may have had them in the home. They heard it at a cinema and thought, wow, I want that in the home. And probably got some for the home. And then when stereo came around, and they were still using big cinema PA speakers well, not really cinema PA speakers then. They were just large, very large. And then I suppose they got those and had those for the home. Bit overkill because limitations to how you're going to cross over it and filter it and EQ it, and that was very limited back then. Equalizers didn't come around until, oh gosh, I think it's the late 60s. I think it's around about the late 60s or very, very late, sort of late 60s, where someone came up with making an equalizer for cinema. Very basic at the time. Wasn't third octave. It had filters to adjust, whether it be a dial, I think, or fader, slider. Very, very, very early day. And then got to Dolby Cinema processors. And then they put a third octave equalizer on a card that's only about that size. That's pretty good for third octave. So you got 40 hertz, 50, 63, 80, 100, 125, 160, 250, 315, 400, 500, 600, 800, 1 kilohertz, 1.25 kilohertz, 1.600 kilohertz, 2 kilohertz, 3.150 kilohertz, 4 kilohertz, 5 kilohertz, 6.300 kilohertz, 8 kilohertz, 10 kilohertz, 12.25 kilohertz, and then 16,000 or 1600 kilohertz, 1600, 16K, and then you got a bass one as well, and a treble. So if your frequency is kind of not looking okay, you got a treble boost, so you can compensate, adjust it, and then you got to go back to the other third octave, to the narrowband filters, and readjust them slightly, so it's kind of juggling sort of thing. And then same with the bass. So it covered that range, which was pretty damn good on a very small card. Whereas, today, a third octave on an equalizer is about this size. Yeah, it's about that deep on some. Some are a little bit deeper, and you look at the electronics inside and you think, bloody hell. And then you look at these small little Dolby equalizer cinema cards, and they're very small. As well as then you did get small ones in like car hi-fi, maybe during the later 1970s or 80s, I don't know. Because everyone's following the same idea of thinking, oh, we could use small ones as well. We don't have to have them large. You don't have to have it large for the home. Blimey. If it does the same thing, why not just have it smaller? And now it is, because the equalizers now are a DSP, but is a DSP versus analog EQ better? The only way, it's not just listening to it, it's actually testing it and using it on an RTA analyzer direct, so you can see when you move the sliders up and down for the specific frequency, and looking at the characteristic, whether it be pink noise or sine wave tone or multi-tone, because multi-tone's a bit more steady than pink noise, because pink noise is kind of dancing around, and pink multi-tone's a bit more steady. So you could use either one of those and observe the characteristic of the frequency when you say rise 1 kilohertz up and take it down, and then look at DSP, and observe the characteristics to see if they're similar or the same or better, worse, whatever. DSP's rubbish or DSP's okay. It's not a case of preference. You got to observe it visually before you can give it preference. You can't just listen to it and say it's preference, because that person hasn't tested it thoroughly to give it judgment. I prefer this because it doesn't have this artifact or such, because one, digital is digital. It may have some artifacts. Go to the analog, observe, test thoroughly, and then you say, yeah, I can observe some sort of artifacts like noise, the signal noise ratio. So if it's silent, quiet, it's got a bit of signal noise ratio. It's got a bit of noise on it, and you observe it on the RTA, and then go to a digital one, and it's like, it's quiet. Okay, let's test it with, raising the filters up and all that with no signal going in, and it's quiet. Or there's something going on here around this frequency range. It's doing something. Something going on there. It's probably a digital clock, or maybe it's this jitter effect. And it's so low down on the noise floor. It's like, you think, I don't think I'm going to notice that when there's some sound playing. I don't think I'm going to notice it. You got to do more testing to see whether it's got anything iffy going on with it. But I know when I have to adjust my cinema processor CP200 and get a characteristic frequency response, because it's got a bit of a high frequency rise on it as it is. So all the filters are flat on the cards, and it's got a bit of a high frequency rise. There are also additional inside a CP200 a switch for on the CAT card. I forgot what CAT card it is. They plug into the processor unit, I think they plug into the processor unit, and they're two cards for the screen channels and the surround channel. They're 2 cards, and they got a high frequency switch on it, which is a simple switch. You just push it up, simple switch up and down, and that gives a bit of extra high frequency for the screen, because typically you got a screen material in the way, and you're going to get sound coming from it, and it's going to reflect and bounce back at the speaker itself. Or if it was a THX baffle wall, the sound's going to pass through the screen. The sound's not going to reflect back, because even if it does still reflect back, it's got an absorbent on the baffle wall where it won't sound very harsh sounding. It's going to be absorbed. It's then going to be pushed outwards into the auditorium. As well as the high frequency boost also helps to make the very, very high frequencies a little bit more perceived easily, because our hearing range has a specific characteristic. Fletcher and Manson curve says low frequencies should be very high up here to perceive those frequencies at a specific given sound pressure, and it should go up and then come down to the middle bass frequencies, and then comes up to the highs and going past 1 kilohertz, and then it goes down a little bit, and then it goes up again, and then rises upward to the high frequencies. So the little wiggle, the thing is, around our hearing range, where it's more sensitive to around between 2 or 4 kilohertz, where it's a little bit more sensitive, sensitivity is a bit more, we hear a bit brighter sounding sort of thing. Most people probably don't use what I use sometimes as an artificial silicon ear, attach that to the microphone, because then it will give a similar characteristic to your ear, because you're not putting in these formulas to equalizing. But if a film soundtrack sounds a bit too harsh or something, it's going to be on your hearing between 2 and 4 kilohertz. And all you have to do is just put a filter and cut the frequency down a bit if you want to, you know. Or you could play sine wave tone. You could play it through the speakers, monitoring the tone on the RTA with the in-room frequency response as well as the direct frequency response. So you got 2 things measuring at the same time. Put a third one on, which is headphones if you want to. So you could put the headphones on, take the headphones off, listen to the loudspeakers in the room, put the headphones back on, mute the sound on the speakers, obviously, and go back and forth and do the testing and come up with a test that is only going to be specific to your environment. You could say, hey, everyone, you could try this and see how you get on with it, but it's only going to apply to your room. Unless your room, or we can make our rooms the same dimension. Now, how many people are going to comply with that? Because then, if cinema says they got this standard, they don't have a standard. There's an X curve. Every bloody cinema auditorium is anywhere to the size of a basement. I kid you not. They're called boothless auditorium. They're not They're not real cinema screens. They're boothless. So you could compare that with a larger cinema auditorium, because typically if you go like some cinemas, where if I were to go to the original Odeon downtown, where that had large auditoriums, and then they divided one auditorium into 4 screen, and they were like shoebox. They were called a shoebox. Tiny. It's like, this isn't a cinema. What have they done? They're destroying cinema. No. They think they're reviving, saving cinema, so they can show more bloody movies. But you know, sometimes a lot showing more movies in the same. You know, I could show more movies in my home. Funny thing that. Yeah, funny thing happened on the way to the moon. Yeah, we can all do that today. Whereas years ago, we had to walk down the road to the video library, get a VHS tape, and then walk back home. That was, you know, because back then, most of us wasn't collecting movies. Some back then started collecting. And then gradually, as it goes on through the years, it then became into collecting. And then you got a library of movies over there and laser discs. My VHS tapes are elsewhere. You got then a selection. You got, say, like a multiplex in your home. But you go to an actual cinema today, they don't keep all those movies. I don't think they keep them on the digital server. Once I think that movie's finished its theatrical run to make box office or fail, that movie then is no longer in that cinema. A cinema today typically can play just about any digital video medium format, including VHS and laserdisc. Don't say they can't when they can, because they got a video projector. Therefore, they can pump the signal from a laserdisc into a cinema, and if you want to, you can go and hire a cinema. If you want them to do something specific, they're going to give you a lot of bullshit, and saying, "Oh, we can't." Well, that's blah blah blah. It's easy to set it up. Bloody hell! If they got a patch bay, a video patch bay, an audio patch bay in that cinema, you can connect a laserdisc player up. No if, no but, no debate, no vote. You can easily connect a laserdisc player. But hiring a cinema auditorium, doesn't matter whether it's a small auditorium or a premier-sized auditorium, will cost a lot of money just for an hour. And then you think you got 2 hours. You want to hire it for hire it for 4 hours or something. Would cost you thousands. And if you're going to do that, I recommend that you take test equipment, so you could do analyzing, acoustical, test the frequency response of that laser disc, because they say allegedly a laser disc is theatrical mix. Okay, so you'll be able to test that in an actual large premier cinema environment, and then have the Blu-ray, the DVD, and then compare that. So you obviously you have to communicate with the projectionist up in booth, because he'll be putting the movie on and then running it, you know. But you got to get through the red tape, because if you say you're going to be doing testing and all this and such, etc., that person may get a little bit queer. I don't mean like homosexual queer, like gay. Queer as in like funny, because he'll be thinking he's getting paid, and he might be thinking, right, someone here wants to unravel the conspiracy. And so he might get a little bit queer, might get a little bit funny. But if you can avoid all that, then you could do the testing and you know, in the actual, you know, environment, though it's not going to be cheap. It's going to be bloody expensive. But like I say, I can remember how a film bloody sounded, whether it was a substandard cinema playing, say, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade in downtown on loudspeaker that were made for the 1960s. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5 of them behind the screen. Only the left, the center, and the right was used. They might have put the sub bass signal into the left, center, right center, but even if it was, it was pretty rubbish at the local ABC. It wasn't that good. Funny enough, comparing Sensurround, which used a different speaker system layout in the auditorium for Earthquake and Battlestar Galactica. I didn't see Roller Coaster. I only saw Earthquake and Battlestar. Battlestar gave me the tinnitus, because Sensurround, they say that can output a sound pressure level without giving hearing damage. Bullshit! Otherwise, since 1979, at late at night time, such, I hear this sound in my ears, and I have not been exposed to any other PA sound system other than the Sensurround. Go figure. Okay, so Last Crusade didn't sound very good. It did sound good, but it didn't sound good in the bass range. As for the high frequency, it may have sounded okay-ish, because the speakers were from the 1960s. There was surround speakers only on the back wall of the auditorium, unknown, but they did pretty good. They did pretty good. And then comparing it to the Empire Leicester Square, what is THX all about? What is this? I've been reading about THX, TAP, Theatre Alignment Program, since 1984. Search for Spock, Leonard Nimoy, interview. We're going to employ Paramount Pictures to do sound servicing for our movie, so the playback is the best optimum it can possibly be. TAP, Theatre Alignment Program. Okay. Which is part of THX. Well, is THX. So I'm reading this on and off over the years, thinking, what the bloody hell is THX all about? I check it out. Knock my socks off. Knock my socks off. I'm thinking, is this what I've been missing on the soundtrack? I didn't know that low frequency was there. And not only that low, I didn't know I can feel it. This is like Sensurround revived, only a lot better than Sensurround. A lot better than Sensurround. And so I'll just clean those. I still need to get these glasses fixed. I just can't be arsed. Maybe I'll go downtown next week, pop in and say, can you take the optics out and put these into a new frame? Because the optics are okay. The optics are okay for my vision. I don't need my my vision refocused, I don't think, because occasionally I've been noticing with a head injury I've had recently, a couple of times now, a few head injuries, my vision sometimes goes totally not blurred, but it kind of, it's probably in the mind, or maybe the eyes, or maybe the blood oxygen flow, because either one will control your vision, just as electronics would with a failed component, and it makes the video signal look a little bit weird, you know. Anyway, it was night and day. It was apples, oranges, pears, grapefruit, pineapple. It was all that. It was all that at the Empire Leicester Square. So this is what I'm been missing. So I had to check out Star Trek. That was my next mission. And like I say, I can remember the localization. I can localize bass in THX. I can localize the bass there. When it's on the surround, it's just like enveloping, engulfing. Unless it's split stereo surround or something, you know, it's a difference in the shifting. But if it's all mono matrix 35mm optical soundtrack, then it's going to be totally uniform. It will be the same thing if it was 70mm mono discrete surround. It would be the same. But if it's split surround, you can localize the positioning with the panning and create a sound field. Wow, that's pretty damn good. In fact, the surrounds were a whole lot better at the Empire than they were at the local cinema. But there's also the other politics with, like, the cinema chain probably had a little bit more clout, a little bit more financial money to make things really top dog, not Top Gun, top dog, you know. Whereas the other cinemas around were kind of like, didn't have as much financial, to make it as good. Otherwise, the means to doing it is there. If you haven't got the finance, you can't do it. Otherwise, the local would have been, because I heard sense around there back in 1975, February. I know what that felt like with Earthquake. I know what it felt like with Battlestar Galactica and those Vipers that are... you got the female talking, flight control, you're clear for takeoff, launch when ready. And then you get this dun, 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 dun. No, I think that was with the TV show with the music. And then you just get this where it's going down a kind of tunnel like that, and it's all the lights are going, oh wow, this is cool. And this bass wave energy, bam, 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 bam. Oh my goodness me. Oh damn. Try. Yeah, everyone's got their home theater with. I've seen so many guys on YouTube. One guy's got a load of JBL speakers, line array or source array or whatever. Yeah, try doing Battlestar Galactica and Earthquake in your home theater. But the thing is, if you haven't experienced it at the cinema in the first place, you've got no clue, no idea on what it is supposed to feel like. Because there's a video on, I think it's on YouTube, where Sense Around was recreated, at a cinema up at Bradford or somewhere up in the UK. It's a bit of a distance to travel, a bit further distant than traveling to the Empire, Leicester Square, actually. I think it's about 200 or 250 miles, and there's no way I'm traveling that distant. But they did Earthquake, 70mm 6-track magnetic, whereas Earthquake that played in the USA was only 35mm, and it was only the European market that had the 70mm prints. I find that a little bit weird, actually. Who came up with that idea? Thought they'd had 70mm prints in the US and, you know, and 35 prints and so on, because 35 prints were also in the UK as well. And certain cinemas that had 70mm would get a 70mm print. Oh, my cat Bear. Is that the cat litter? Okay, Bear. Uh-oh. What's going on? The fuck? What the fuck? What's all this mess? Oh, for Christ's sake. Crying out loud. No, what's all this meowing? What's all this mess? What the fuck? Oh, pipe. My cat Bear's been in the rubbish bin. Look, he's taken the bloody packet out. And he's... Look at that. That's a work of art. That is a work of art. Bloody hell. And he's crapped in the cat litter, crapped all over the floor. I can clean it all up, clean the floor. Oh. And on top of that, you get me out of bed. I was relaxed. Now I've got to change my glasses to Farfield. I may as well get up now. May as well get up now, boys. My perception on sound and how I hear sound will make a lot of home theatre people on YouTube extremely jealous of my ability. When I flush the toilet, where do I hear the sound? I'm standing upright, aren't I? I hear the sound below. When I go to the sink and wash my hands, where do I hear the sound? I hear it below. I don't hear it up this height, where you would in a film mix, because they haven't got a true center channel height, middle and below channel. You got all this left and right height elevation bullshit, but you haven't got, like with Dolby Atmos, like a height center, middle center and below center, which will work pretty damn good on aliens. Elevator, ride the hill, drop ship, you know, when you see the drop ship coming down, and then you got the doors that are down here opening up. Yeah. Yeah. Are we watching now? See, I know what to look for, I know what to listen for, and I know what to feel for. That's three things. That's three things there. Basic, three things. And if you've got those qualities, then you know how to put your home cinema together, or somehow know how to put a cinema together.